the amendment be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Riverina.
Well, I can tell a member for Adelaide where he'd be, but not for TAFE. He'd be floating off in the Aegean Sea, somewhere off the Isle of Costa Lazaro, probably. But he's a good man, and there were some elements to his speech which I wholeheartedly agreed with when he said that the government was delivering. Yes, they are delivering. They are delivering on the Coalition's AUKUS proposal, the Coalition's AUKUS idea, and when he talks about the 30,000 jobs needed for the submarine build, that's important, and it's very much going to be reliant on those valuable trades, on those imperative skills. The senior economist at the Housing Industry Association, Matt King, recently stated that the HIA Trades Availability Index for the September quarter 2024 revealed a worsening of the national skilled trades shortage scenario. And in the media release issued on the 22nd of October, he had this further to say. The residential building industry currently employs approximately 278,000 tradies across the 12 key trade occupations required for home building. The trades workforce needs to grow by at least 30% to meet a 1.2 million home target over the next 5 years. That is over 83,000 additional tradies. He continued. The most acute shortages of skilled tradespeople remain in bricklaying, tiling, plastering and carpentry. This means a significant boost is needed in a variety of trade occupations to get these much-needed homes completed. Despite concerted efforts to boost the domestic trades workforce, significant challenges remain. Creating career opportunities for the local workforce must be the priority. However, this alone will not solve the tradie shortage. And Labor has itself in a bit of a pickle, because Labor did promise to build 1.2 million homes. And under Labor's watch, we have migration which is way exceeding in a month what we once took in over a 12-month period during the Howard years of government. And this immigration policy is indeed alarming, because we have people coming in at a rate which we cannot sustain, certainly not in the housing industry. And then we have a Victorian government that seems adverse to wanting to have a timber industry. We've got a Victorian state government which doesn't want any new homes to have gas appliances. And when you're trying to stymie the industry as far as how you're going to power homes, when you're trying to stall the industry as to what you're going to build those homes with, i.e. timber, it is a one-way street to disaster, and Labor is on this one-way street to disaster. And then they bring in a policy such as this, and the Coalition is perturbed. Because people should see this for what it truly is. Now, after uncovering that Labor's commitment to make free TAFE permanent is unfunded, it's just incumbent upon us to call it out and for what it is. Australian students deserve better than fake pledges on skills and training. And I appreciate that the member for Adelaide is a graduate of TAFE, as am I. And I hold near and dear those lessons I learned in the technical and further education campus at Wagga Wagga. But the Coalition opposes this free TAFE legislation because it is unfunded. Not just that, it has the potential to increase the Commonwealth spending by $500 million a year. And Labor just can't keep throwing money out there and pretending as though that it's all costed, it's all in the budget, it's all in the forward estimates, because it is creating a debt situation. And I appreciate the Treasurer often goes to that dispatch box just over there and talks about the $1 trillion worth of Liberal Party debt that Labor inherited. Well, let's just unpack that for a bit. It was nowhere near $1 trillion, and if it is $1 trillion now, well, it's on his watch, it's on his head. Nowhere near $1 trillion. Seems to forget that the Liberals were in government with the Nationals. But worse than that and more than that, doesn't ever qualify his remarks by saying that the coalition was dealing with a global pandemic. A global pandemic which had the biggest economic downturn in this nation, and the Labor will say the global financial crisis, but it's since the Great Depression of the late 20s, early 30s. And he was not around that table. I was, when the Chief Health Officer for this nation and the Chief of Defence Force gave the alarming news about how terrible COVID was and could be, and indeed, had we not acted, would have been. And the Johns Hopkins Institute, the centre that assesses how well nations do as far as preparedness, and also what nations did as far as recovery, and what they did as far as economic activity during the actual global pandemic of COVID-19, showed that Australia was ranked second in the world. Second in the world, and that is because, yes, we spend a lot of money. We spend a lot of money through JobKeeper. We spend a lot of money through vaccines. We spend a lot of money saving jobs and protecting people's lives. And the Treasurer is being disingenuous when he doesn't refer to that, because but for that spend, but for that money that went out the Treasury doors, there would be a lot of people who would not be in a job. There would be a lot of businesses which would now be bankrupt, and there would be a lot of people who, quite frankly, would not be alive. We saved their lives. And that is the first order of government, is to protect its people, and we did just that. Indeed, 1.1 million jobs were created since the pandemic hit. And this is the last term of the Morrison government. 700,000 jobs saved through JobKeeper. One I'm particularly proud of, and that's 220,000 trade apprentices. Now, that was a record high for Australia, and that came under our economic stewardship. That came in our government. And indeed, that shows, that is proof positive of just what we did, indeed, during the pandemic to cope with the COVID-19, but to make sure that our country was economically on a good footing, and that lives were being saved. And yet, now we have a government that irresponsibly is just throwing money like there was no tomorrow, because with any luck, Deputy Speaker, for this government, there will be no tomorrow, because people will be wise as to what this government offers, or indeed what they do not offer, and at the next election will vote for a Liberal Nationals return, and that is very much needed. But this legislation permanently commits the Commonwealth to fund free TAFE before it's reviewed. And Senate estimates confirmed that there's been no review conducted into this proposal, into this expenditure, and you could be seeing anywhere up to $1 billion being spent on a program which is just there for Labor largesse. Now, I've always said that a TAFE certificate is just as valuable, if not more so, than a university degree. You might think I would say that. I have any number of TAFE certificates, and I do not have a university degree. And that is something that I know that for those TAFE students, it is important that that piece of paper for them is every bit as valuable as a tertiary degree, because it opens doors to a better future. And Australia does need to continue to support and encourage our young people, as well as anyone of any age seeking to upskill, to pursue an education through TAFE. After all, it's the men and women with the skills, trades, builders, plumbers, electricians, mechanics, agriculture workers and many more who keep our country running. They do. we have the Greens political party, who are the ones, and they'll be the ones from whom they'll be preferencing Labor and vice versa at the next election. But they don't understand that it's those tradies who keep the lights on, keep the taps working, or indeed building the infrastructure which sustains modern civil society. And too often these inner-city types have no understanding or appreciation of the work involved to sustain their quality of life. And I stand adamantly alongside and with tradies, workers and the efforts to train more. And so does the Coalition. And the Coalition government allocated $2.1 billion to support and give Australians the opportunity to upskill. I mentioned the statistics before. The work we were doing, the funding we were investing, went to the heart of what we needed to make sure that we had the right number of apprentices, the right number of people in the right programs, in the right places. And here we have a Labor government which has made all sorts of promises about building homes, not reining their states in when they had the opportunity. I mean, we well remember it was wall-to-wall Labor on mainland Australia. Thankfully, the Northern Territory has returned to a country Liberal Party government, and also thankfully Queensland has returned to a Liberal National Party government. But Labor did have the opportunity, when it was wall-to-wall red across mainland Australia, to rein those states in and to help them on that ambitious program of building more homes. But they did nothing and they said nothing. And do you know why? Do you know why? It's because they were too focused on a divisive referendum called Voice. That is the first and only priority that Labor did in its first months and months and months of office. Months of office. And then it took the Australian people to say no to that. And then what happened? Presto, the next day, all of a sudden, cost of living became the government's focus. Well, they hadn't addressed the cost of living issue. They hadn't addressed the homes crisis. They still haven't addressed either of those. And worse still, we are still getting a flood of people into this nation each and every month. We heard today in question time a new person coming in every 44 seconds. And yet Labor's saying, nothing to see here, all okay. Well, it's not all okay. We need to get back to the basics. We need to ensure that, yes, we have a viable, operational TAFE. This bill, this legislation, this proposal is purely symbolic. It's typical tokenistic behaviour by Labor. And sadly, people see it for what it is. So many of Labor's endeavours are just that. They are media opportunities that have no substance. They haven't been thought through. We heard from the HIA. They're ringing the bell on what's going wrong. They are a good organisation. They can see what is happening. Labor needs to address this crisis. Unfortunately, they won't. They are still got their head in the wrong issues, and they're taking Australians and the nation over the cliff with them. Now, a footnote in the legislation states that an FT place may not be free of all fees, and the fees covered will depend on the terms and conditions of the relevant FT agreement. How interesting. How many people will still have to pay for their TAFE course? It's a good question. It's no surprise from a government that thrives on trying to, I would say deceive, but I'll be kinder and just say pulling the wool over the eyes of the Australian people and taxpayers. But it is a bit of deceit. But it gets worse. Labor is asking the Australian people to accept the bill when they haven't done the proper and due process before it comes into this place. And that is so typical Labor. They don't consult stakeholders. They don't properly cost things. They don't properly look through things and see what are the unintended consequences. Instead, they come here with a bill that is going to put additional funding on the budget without doing all the due process typical Labor, the opposition will not support this bill.
Order. I thank